In the swirling vortex of American politics, where bold declarations often clash with the gritty realities of global economics, President Donald Trump's second term has wasted no time in resurrecting his signature brand of aggressive trade warfare. As someone who spent 2 decades dissecting the intricacies of U.S. policy, from the smoke-filled rooms of Capitol Hill to the high-stakes summits that reshape international alliances, I've seen my share of tariff tantrums and deal-making dramatics. But Trump's latest salvo, aimed squarely at the pharmaceutical industry, feels like a high-wire act without a net. It's a move that promises to repatriate manufacturing jobs and secure America's health supply chains, yet it risks inflating drug prices, straining alliances, and sparking shortages that could hit patients hardest. Let's unpack this layered strategy, starting with the president's own words. A phased tariff on pharmaceuticals that begins modestly but escalates dramatically to 150% within a year and a half, and potentially soaring to 250% thereafter. The rationale? We want pharmaceuticals made in our country, Trump declared, framing it as a nationalist imperative for self-reliance. This isn't just rhetoric, it's a calculated escalation in Trump's broader trade agenda, one that echoes his first term's battles but amps up the intensity for a post-pandemic world still reeling from supply chain vulnerabilities. Picture this. The U.S. pharmaceutical market, a behemoth worth hundreds of billions annually, has long relied on a web of international suppliers. Active pharmaceutical ingredients, APIs, trickle in from India and China, advanced therapies from Europe's biotech hubs, and generics crisscrossing the border with Canada. Trump's plan seeks to unravel that dependency, forcing companies to build factories on American soil. At first blush, it resonates with voters weary of outsourcing, those Rust Belt communities that propelled him back to the White House in 2024. But as we delve deeper, the complexities emerge like fault lines in a seemingly solid foundation. Consider the immediate targets. The European Union, fresh off what was touted as a landmark trade framework, found itself slapped with a 15% tariff on pharmaceutical exports to the U.S. This came mere weeks after the July announcement of that very deal, which promised stability and mutual benefits. The irony is palpable. One hand extends an olive branch of investment and energy purchases, while the other wields the tariff hammer. EU officials, already navigating post-Brexit fractures and energy crises, expressed bewilderment. What's the point of a framework if it's violated before the ink dries? One negotiator reportedly mused in private briefings. This tariff isn't trivial. It jumps from 0 to 15% overnight, a dramatic increase as industry insiders describe it, capable of disrupting the flow of life-saving drugs. For context, the EU supplies a significant portion of U.S. biologics and specialty medications. Think cutting-edge cancer treatments and vaccines. Hiking costs here doesn't just pad corporate ledgers. It ripples through insurance premiums and out-of-pocket expenses for American families. Then there's India, the unsung hero of affordable generics, providing upwards of 40% of the U.S. market's low-cost alternatives to brand-name drugs. Trump's administration has zeroed in on New Delhi not only for its pharmaceutical prowess, but also for its continued oil purchases from Russia amid ongoing geopolitical tensions. The threat of tariffs here is layered. Start small but ramp up aggressively if manufacturing doesn't shift stateside. India's response has been a mix of defiance and diplomacy, with officials highlighting their role in keeping U.S. healthcare costs manageable. But the subtext is clear. Trump's policy ties trade to broader foreign policy grievances, using pharmaceuticals as leverage against nations that don't align perfectly with U.S. interests. This approach harkens back to his first term's Section 301 tariffs on China, which aimed at intellectual property theft, but ended up costing American consumers billions. Here, the stakes are even higher. Disruptions in API supplies could lead to widespread shortages, as we've seen in past crises like the 2020 hydroxychloroquine scramble during COVID-19. Canada, our northern neighbor and closest ally, faces a more insidious threat, not from direct tariffs, at least not yet, but from a pricing policy that's equally disruptive. Trump's team has revived the Most Favored Nation (MFN) pricing rule, an executive order demanding that U.S. drug prices never exceed those in other countries, adjusted for GDP. For Canadians, where new treatments cost about 50% less than in the U.S., this spells trouble. Drug makers, compelled to comply, might hike Canadian prices to avoid slashing U.S. ones, effectively exporting America's pricing woes northward. As one Canadian health expert put it, Our sticker prices may have to come up because we're pinpointed as a low-cost benchmark. This isn't abstract economics, it's a direct hit to provincial healthcare budgets, already stretched thin. Higher costs could delay the rollout of innovative therapies, exacerbating existing shortages that plague Canada's system periodically. The human element here can't be overstated. Imagine a family in Toronto waiting for a breakthrough cancer drug, only to face delays because manufacturers recalibrate prices under US pressure. Or consider the bilateral trade. Canada exports billions in generics to the US while importing branded drugs. This pharmaceutical offensive doesn't exist in isolation. It's part of Trump's sweeping trade reconfiguration, one that prioritizes transactional stability over traditional free trade ideals. Flashback to late July when Trump heralded his biggest trade deal yet with the European Union. "We've reached a deal. It's a good deal for everybody," he boasted, unveiling a framework that imposes a 15% blanket tariff on most EU goods entering the US, with pharmaceuticals notably included in the initial hit, despite earlier exemptions floated in negotiations. Steel and aluminum face even steeper 50% duties under national security pretexts, a holdover from his first term that continues to irk allies. In return, the EU pledged a staggering $750 billion in US energy purchases and $600 billion in investments, plus undisclosed commitments to defense procurement. It's a deal built on scale, access to a 450 million person market in exchange for these massive inflows. But peel back the layers, and questions abound. This isn't a binding treaty, it's a framework, announced days before a threatened 30% tariff escalation. The timing reeks of coercion. Trump's classic playbook of pressure followed by partial relief. We've seen this movie before. With Japan, where similar threats yielded a deal promising $550 billion in investments, later scaled back amid disputes. With the United Kingdom, navigating post-Brexit uncertainties, and even Vietnam, a rising manufacturing hub courted as an alternative to China. In each case, the pattern holds: dangle catastrophic tariffs, then settle on a 15% baseline coupled with eye-popping procurement promises. It's not liberalization, it's a toll booth on global commerce, where allies pay for predictability. Trump's defenders argue this flips the script on decades of unfair trade, where the US subsidized the world through open markets. Fair point. American workers have borne the brunt of globalization's downsides, from factory closures to wage stagnation. Yet the execution raises red flags. Those billion-dollar pledges, often aspirational, lacking enforcement teeth. Take the EU's energy commitments. Does Europe truly need $750 billion more in US LNG and oil, especially with its green transition accelerating? And can America ramp up production fast enough without environmental backlash? Shifting gears to Asia, Trump's deal with South Korea exemplifies the theater of it all. Announced just 2 days before the August 1st deadline, it locked in 15% tariffs, while touting $350 billion in investments owned and controlled by the United States, with a claimed 90% profit split favoring Americans. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick amplified the narrative, crediting Trump's direction. But skepticism abounds. No legal documents surfaced, no timelines clarified. Seoul confirmed steps toward formalization, yet the details remain hazy, much like Japan's earlier pact where grandiose figures evaporated under scrutiny. Fox News spun it as a windfall, claiming tariffs raked in $150 billion from abroad, but reality bites. Tariffs are paid by importers, often American firms, who pass costs to consumers via higher prices. This economic sleight of hand has real-world repercussions. Businesses from automakers to retailers warn of layoffs and earnings squeezes. The Federal Reserve, eyeing this uncertainty, delayed an anticipated rate cut, citing ongoing negotiations. Amid this frenzy, Canada stands as the intriguing holdout, a case study in strategic patience. With a 35% tariff looming on August 1st if no deal materializes, Prime Minister Mark Carney, drawing on his Bank of England pedigree, has refused to buckle. No deal by the deadline, he stated plainly, describing talks as complex and constructive, but emphasizing benefits for Canadians above all. Unlike the EU or South Korea, which inked frameworks under duress, Ottawa leverages its deep integration. Over $1 trillion in U.S. investments, intertwined energy sectors, Alberta's oil fueling American refineries, and auto supply chains, Ontario parts keeping Detroit humming. These aren't bargaining chips, They're lifelines that give Canada leverage Trump can't easily dismiss. Carney's approach shifts from early optimism to managed expectations, prepping provinces for trade-offs. It's a nod to lessons from Trump's first term, when NAFTA's renegotiation yielded USMCA, flawed but functional. Rushing now could lock in vague terms like the EU's postponed retaliatory tariffs, 6 months grace, per reports, breeding long-term regrets. Instead, Canada eyes targeted protections in autos, energy, and digital trade, negotiating on its timetable. This defiance exposes Trump's model's vulnerability. It thrives on capitulation, but falters against resolve. If tariffs hit, cross-border trade, valued at nearly $1 trillion annually, suffers, but Canada signals readiness to retaliate, perhaps on U.S. exports like agriculture or tech. Zooming out, Trump's pharma tariffs and trade frameworks embody a bolder second act, untethered by re-election worries. His first term's China tariffs, which added $80 billion to consumer costs per some estimates, set the stage. Now he expands the battlefield. Proponents hail it as America First reborn, securing jobs in high-tech sectors like biotech. Critics, including some Republicans, decry the chaos, disrupted alliances, inflated costs, and innovation stifled by uncertainty. For patients, the medical toll looms, delayed therapies, rationed supplies, building U.S. pharma plants. Feasible but years away, giants like Eli Lilly and Johnson & Johnson pledge investments, yet short-term gaps persist. As August 1st passed without a Canadian accord, the scoreboard muddies. Trump's wins with Europe and South Korea dazzle in headlines, but their vagueness breeds doubt. Carney's stance? A masterclass in calling the bluff, reminding us that in trade's high-stakes poker, folding too soon costs dearly. The president's leverage is potent, but overreach risks backlash. Economic isolation, allied resentment, even domestic pushback if prices spike. Looking ahead, this saga underscores American politics' enduring tension. Nationalism versus globalism. Trump's tariffs aim to forge self-sufficiency, but in an interconnected world, isolation invites peril. And for Americans, vigilance is key. Monitor those drug prices, question the big number boasts, and remember, policy's true measure lies not in announcements, but outcomes. Yet the drama unfolds, a testament to America's enduring quest for dominance in an unforgiving global arena.